behalf of the commanding general of this base, I hereby welcome you to Marine Corps Recruit Depot. Now get the off my goddamn boss!
Oh dear. Actually, that isn't the start of the story. Today's the first day of the rest of our lives.
Talked it over with my dad. I'm gonna do what he did.
The Marines
A man needs a mission.
need something to aim for. Which brings us back to here.
Why do you want to be a Marine, Cameron?
For freedom.
I mean, you guys are number 2 globally. You're number 2 in the US. I checked, you're number 3 in Thailand. I'm in Thailand, by the way, if you didn't know.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So you're number 3 in Thailand, which is amazing.
Great.
I talked to Miles and Max like a week before the show launched. We were all in New York, and they didn't know what the reception would be. Obviously, now it's kind of really blown up. What was your perspective before the show launched, and then all this noise afterwards? A good noise.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I've been completely stunned by it. I always had an instinct that the show would ultimately find an audience. I am really proud of the show. I think everybody who worked on it gave just their all in it, and I think you feel that in the performances, in the craftsmanship of how it's made. But it is a show that has some things going against it. You know, it doesn't have huge stars in it. It's not based on big IP. There's a million shows out there right now. So how are people gonna find this thing? And unfortunately, I just think it's been a word of mouth sensation, but it's happened quicker than I expected. I did not expect us in our second week to be number 2 in the world, and that's astonishing. And it's really surprising to me that it's done so well abroad as well. I just, it's an American focused show. It's about the US Marine Corps. I guess I didn't realize just what kind of broad appeal that might have.
So tell me about adapting the book, which I've not read the book, but I know there's some, the characters are a little different and there's some changes there.
Yeah, so the book was a really important inspiration, and it was something that I connected to very personally. But the book is a memoir. It's not a novel. It's not. So no plot was used. Like that, the plot of the show is the show. And in addition, one of the first conversations I had with Greg, who wrote the book, and the book is fantastic. Everybody should check it out for its own and for its own terms. But one of the first things I said to Greg was, if I'm going to adapt this and I have to find my way into this personally, I'm not going to tell the story of your life. I have to have the freedom to create a new character who can go and be, inspired, and there will be certain things that will be inflected from your journey. But the ultimate course of this journey is going to have to be dictated by this new character. And also that gave me the freedom to build an ensemble around him that was going to be robust and have each of these people go on their own journeys. Obviously, because the memoir is a memoir, Greg doesn't have access to everybody's internal lives or backstories. But that said, I think the detail I most wanted to preserve from the book that I thought was so intriguing was this friendship between Greg and his best friend Dale, this gay straight friendship, which you don't often hear about. And if you do ever see it on screen, very often it's portrayed as this like secret longing between the gay kid is always secretly pining for the straight one. And there's nothing of that in the memoir, and I was not interested in doing any of that either. So that was very refreshing. And I think preserving that friendship at the heart of the show still was something I was committed to making sure we did.
Yeah, and I have to say that was probably the biggest surprise, since I didn't know much going into the show when I watched. I thought this was going to be the gay Marine show. And knowing your background with Tales of the City and things like that, I really thought it was going to be gay, gay, gay. And you end up with this really great ensemble. And there is LGBT stories in there with Sullivan and everybody. But it was so much more than that. And I really respect that about your choices there, because it really could have gone the other way. Was that a big talking point for yourself to even think, like, what kind of show do I want to make?
I always knew two things. One, that if we were going to go back into a military context, there's been so much iconic, great media, films and television around the military. If we're going to go back into that world, the only reason to do that is to go in through a queer sensibility and a queer lens, which we haven't seen much of.
Right.
That said, I always knew, the other thing I knew was that it was going to be an ensemble piece. and that yes, our way into this interesting new world was going to be through this fish out of water, our queer character. And for him, the stakes would be obvious right away. It's
Yeah,
clear that he has to hide himself because it's illegal. But what we were going to be able to then unpack as the season went on is that there are also stakes for all of the other guys. We know what Cameron's hiding, but we're going to have to find out what all of these other guys are hiding. And in doing that, the case we're making, the case that I think the show is making, is that this is a universal journey of transformation, of coming of age, right? So that it's not just about a gay kid story. This coming of age experience is something that happens to all of us, and we have to all of us have to reckon with something we're running from or hiding from or ashamed of. Boot camp in this case is the context where that's going to be confronted.
what surprised you about that era before Don't Ask, Don't Tell really kind of blew up and all became a thing? What I'm sure you did some research and looked into that. What surprised you about that time?
Well, just that they did ask, just that
Mm.
they were so invasive and so
Uh,
like and that these witch hunts were periodic. There would be times when, depending on administration or the leadership priorities, things wouldn't be as intense. And then all of a sudden a crackdown would come and there would be like a purge, right? And so coming to understand that there was a secret network within the military of like gay people who were on the one hand sort of looking out for each other, and sometimes they became the enemy because if somebody knows your secret, you're in danger. And
yeah,
depending on the sort of threat level, that your safety could really change at any time. So just how scary that could be, and at the
yeah,
same time how people persisted and were resilient in that system. That was all that was fascinating to me.
yeah. And I love that Norman Lear's name appears in every episode. I had a chance to talk to Norman many times over the years, and did he have a chance to weigh in on the show development? I know he wrote the forward for the book and was a big fan of that, but did he have time to weigh in that? Because him being a veteran, I know he had a lot of opinions and he was an ally as well for LGBTQ plus people.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no better advocate for the kind of television we were trying to make. I mean, trying to live up to his legacy, I think, is really the key. He was definitely the godfather of this project. I mean, he was 99 years old when we started
Yeah,
this
yeah,
process. So, and unfortunately, he didn't get to live to see the final product. But I would say that his spirit, his agenda, his um, priorities, I think, were always top of mind. And there were certainly times that I reached out to him for counsel. But
yeah.
it just to be part of the legacy of his work, I think is a tremendous honor.
I rewatched the first episode yesterday just to refresh my mind, and Cameron talking to himself and Miles playing both those roles. I feel like that's a tricky thing to pull off, and you guys did pull it off. I loved every time that alternate
Mm.
self would show up and kind of basically be his conscience. But how did you guys? Did you know that would work? Like, were you confident going in that that would work? Because that could have backfired and been really hokey, but it's not. But how did you make it work? And were you confident about it?
Jim, I knew it was going to work.
Okay.
Other people did not know it was going to work. The thing is, it's not like we were doing any revolutionary thing. We've seen these kinds of apparitions before, and so technically speaking, it was not significantly challenging. What we had to do was make sure that it was fitting the tone of the show, and that it was structurally not taking up too much energy, right? So you have to have just enough that you welcome Inner Cameron's presence, that it doesn't feel like we're taking our medicine now. Now we have to hear from the truth teller.
Right.
We want those scenes to be injected with a certain life and tension and sometimes zest. And other times then come to find that there's real pathos there. And the Inner Cameron has his own point of view and his own agenda, and that conflict is actually going to become not just like a joke. He's not a jack in the box.
Yeah.
He becomes something that actually speaks to the deeper themes of the show. That was an essential thing to me. That was something that was a non-negotiable
Uh,
for me.
okay.
If this kid was going to have to be closeted and he was going to have to lock part of himself up, that we had to personify that locked up
Yeah.
part of him.
That's fabulous. Also fabulous the music, which I feel like is a soundtrack that still plays on my music, like whether I'm at the gym or it's
Great.
just like
It's
those
good.
are
Yeah.
songs that have never gone away from me because I'm of that era.
Yeah.
But can you about, was that all you, or did your music supervisor kind of weigh in on a lot of that?
Oh yeah, a lot of credit to Sarah Bromberg, our music supervisor. And but some more things that like I want to break free. Like I knew that that had to be in the show and in the pilot, because it was just so thematically exactly right. It's been fun to hear from the cast, because and maybe this came up in some of your discussions when they were shooting the show. Of course, very intense things are happening to them. They're in, very grueling conditions. They don't know that I'm going to put the Smiths or Queen or whatever over it, Depeche Mode. Like they don't know that, and so they don't know that this moment that's so intense for them is actually going to play in a much more tonally interesting way.
There is a bit of a cliffhanger at the end of the season, where we could see a potential season two, which fingers crossed that happens. Do you envision season two being markedly different? Because it looks like they would be out of boot camp and actually going into the field, perhaps. Excuse me, which would make it a very different show, I think, in a lot of ways. But can you talk about your vision, I guess, for a potential second season?
What I've always intended was for the show to adapt and change as we're growing with Cameron. So
Mm,
the show has to, he's our beating heart of the show. And, we come into boot camp in season one with him as this intense underdog. And by the end of the season, he's had this triumph. But there needs to be a sort of lump in our throat for us as an audience feeling like, good for you, Cameron, but is this right? And all of those questions are voiced, very powerfully, I think, by inner Cameron. Because I think the question we should feel at the end of the first season is like, has Cameron just climbed a ladder that's leaned against the wrong wall, right? Like,
mm.
is this good for his soul? I think that's where the show has to start answering that question, and we start have now that he's achieved this really difficult thing, and good for him. Now you're a Marine. Now you have to go to war. Now,
Yeah.
what is that? And what does that feel like? So the challenge of season two, will be to give people exactly the same show and a totally different show.
Wow. Well, congratulations. I
Yeah.
can't wait to see more from the show, and I'm glad the reception's been so big. It's
Thank you, Jim. I hope it continues. Yeah, hoping for a season two.
It's just the first day. You've only been here for one day.